been working in internet safety, believe it or not, since before a lot of people were born, 1994. How do you do trust and safety? Because there really isn't a full playbook. I'm sure you guys lose a lot of sleep over it.
Yeah, sure. I think, well, there is a trust and safety playbook, right? The challenge is, though, the medium is different, and it's ever changing, and it's generative, and we have this kind of open context loop with the user. But some of the core product primitives do remain, right? So we still have the age of the user, we still know the location of the user, and those things can help inform what the products ultimately do. And so I think some of the same challenges remain. They're just more difficult to handle. And I'm actually curious, Nathan, about on your side, since you're at the forefront of this in the trust and safety space with Character.AI, the companion chats, how are you guys wrangling that from your end?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So there's a rule book that has been made and developed, and it's continuously iterated on for something like social media. But what we're looking at now with the introduction of AI consumer product is that it is innately a different experience. It's a private experience. It's something that is used as a one-to-one, but one of those ones doesn't even exist, which is a really unique challenge to try to get a hold of. So having visibility while also maintaining privacy, having intervention while also not creating too much friction. These are areas that are challenging to navigate, but I think that Mike is very, very right in saying that there are ground levels of truth, right? There are certain things that you can metric and defend against, and that can happen through a number of different ways, either redundancy, multiple layers, having, a lot of different processes and guardrails to try to influence and enact safety and moderate. Because truthfully and honestly, there is no silver bullet. There is no one shoe size fits all kind of a solution for what we're seeing within the AI trust and safety field. So I really like the exploration that we do, specifically at TrustCon too, like sitting in rooms of people that are all either paying attention to this focus or discussing solutions here. That is translatable. I mean, safety is not siloed. Safety is not proprietary. If somebody wins, it benefits the entirety of the community. So being in that space, I think I have a lot of hope and promise for the trust and safety of the AI industry itself. And I've already felt like the buy-in and the help from other folks that are in the same space.
It's a kind of a weird regulatory environment. Again, it depends on what part of the world you're in or your users are in, and it also depends on what administration happens to be in power, who's in Congress, and what they vote on. But right now, it does seem like you guys are kind of on your own, at least in the United States, when it comes to a lack of clear guidance or regulation.
Yeah, so I've been in a very fortunate position to be in a company that is not afraid to take a swing for an ethical or moral reasoning around safety as a non-bare minimum requirement. Trust and safety at Character is around a third of the entire company. So the influence and impact that we're able to have is actually pretty substantial. When we wanted to kind of impact our user group and bifurcate the experiences of a minor and over the age of 18 user, we were able to do that. Nobody made us do that. That was a very hard-fought decision that we were able to make and then also see the benefit of. But I like rules. If there are more rules, then it is more of an incentive to actually make action on that, not from a singular one business inside of a larger industry kind of focus, but then there are more eyes, there are more actors in that same field that will follow the same rules. So I'm a big fan of creating a ground level of safety and more support and visibility into how we can achieve safety. But I think that for right now, the lack of regulatory know-how, knowledge base of regulatory bodies is not very strong. If you've ever spoken with a legislator or a policymaker, you might have found that they have some misconceptions around how AI even works fundamentally. So creating that knowledge share and then also creating a set of understanding and rules that everybody can follow does impact a very positive area of AI engagement. Without that, there's not a whole lot of incentive to do more than the bare minimum, other than, if you have the desire to make a good product, which some people just don't have that same kind of desire. So again, very fortunate, but also I would love some more incentives so that the industry can follow.
What you said about the lack of knowledge in Capitol reminds me when the late Senator Stevens many years ago described the World Wide Web as a series of tubes. A little bit of tech education.
And I would just add, having policy is probably not enough. The platform actually has to behave differently. Like, companies can write principles all day, but if the end user's product experience actually doesn't change, based on a rule, based on their age, based on their location, then it's not protection. It's just a PDF. And so I think there's a whole other part of this equation where, I think Katie kind of fits in the picture, which is to say, how do you build age-adaptive infrastructure at scale, at runtime? It's really hard. So if you have a singular product, maybe you just go package it up, you patch it one time, a rule changes, you apply that, and now you're good to go. And that's kind of been the operating model that the software industry has operated off of, whether it's a game, it's a social app, or some other type of software. But what we're discovering, of course, is that laws and regulations are growing, both in velocity and complexity. And so now that becomes really unsustainable to do. You have to separate out the brain from the actual product experience and have a go-between layer so that that's not brittle and allows you to actually make those flexible changes as rules evolve, whether it's your own internal policy or it's laws that govern your actual product experiences.
The other thing I'm thinking about, most of us here are at TrustCon, and it's an incredibly empathetic group of people. I learned that because I'm in a wheelchair, and I can't tell you how many people have offered to push me and open doors for me, and far more than I think would be true of the random population. And these are the people that I work with day in and day out, as Connect Safely works as advisors and partners with many of the major social media and tech companies, some of whom are represented in this room, including Character.AI. We're working with some of the greatest people in the world. But you guys don't necessarily run the companies. You're not the entire staff. And so how can we take kind of the ethos that we see here and make sure that that's embedded in the engineering team, marketing team, and of course in the C-suite, among the people who are making the ultimate decisions, some of whom have to answer to shareholders. How can we make this part of everybody's job?
I'd be very curious for your answer, but I'll just kind of give my little bit of a reaction. I think the first is giving them tools, right? So in the engineers world, we used to have this kind of one-size-fits-all approach, which is age blind, right? Which is the result of the experience would really be one of two ways. You either block out a certain cohort and user constituency that's maybe under a certain age range, or maybe in a certain geo, because it's too hard to maybe, untangle all the different laws and regulations by which you have to abide by. So you're blocking out a portion of your population. Or you let everybody into the same room, which has obviously its own risks, its own challenges. And the reality is there's the third path, and we all recognize it, right? Even logically, the C-suite would understand that this is a good mode, which is age adaptive design by default. So let those users in, but let them in with the experiences that are appropriate for their location, their age, potentially their household values. If a parent is managing their overall user experience. And so this common axiom that has been kind of treaded around for years around, safety harms engagement has always been backwards. That if you let a user in the right way, you not only grow your total addressable market, you grow engagement, potentially parent-approved engagement, which might even be transaction-based. And therefore, they also grow up in your experience, so the lifetime value of the user goes up. The point being then, the right thing to do is actually the best thing to do.
Yeah, I think that we're reaching a point where trust and safety being baked in at the ground level. So you have trust and safety in those design meetings, talking with the engineers in the product meetings. that actually promotes sustainable growth. If you have trust and safety baked in at the very 11th hour end of the whole process, you are going to be spending downstream time fixing things, just innately. If trust and safety is not regarded in the initial stages when you're planning, then you will spend time later trying to wheel things back and make trust and safety baked in at a point where it is now harder and you have tech debt to get that sustained level of kind of ground truth of trust and safety in product. So I would highly recommend trying to get the folks from the trust and safety teams in those rooms. Talk with the ideas, talk with the people that have the ideas around what's next on the product, what's next on the roadmap, and then see how does that interact with trust and safety itself. Are there risks? Are there areas? But then I would also argue, try to make a spec that outlines what should this do. If you are trying to evaluate all of the ways that it can go wrong, you're going to spend a lot of time identifying risks, which are good and you should have awareness there. But if you can outline what it should do in every use case, if every use case is good and it would follow this map or it would follow this plan, this design, that is a much more helpful way to structure that conversation, because then it can guide the product development into an area that everyone is comfortable with, rather than trying to guide the area or guide the product into an area that trust and safety says, well, that's okay, but it can do all of these other things, but if it followed this path, you're going to get lost in the weeds, and you're going to spend a lot of time trying to maneuver into an area that you're going to be comfortable with, rather than building a product that is comfortable at the start.
And I have to say, for a founder of a company, their goal is to create a product that's really good, really cool. People are going to love it. It reminds me of somebody who's building a new car, and what they want it to do is be really pretty and go really fast. And oh, by the way, I think we have to do something called an airbag and a brake. Nobody buys a car because it has brakes. They buy a car because it has an accelerator, but they want it to have a brake. And the government is pretty insistent that they put brakes on those cars. I think we maybe need a little of that in this business. What can we, as an industry, do to create infrastructure that can allow us to scale, safety at scale, without having every single company design every aspect of trying to make their product safe and appropriate?
Yeah, I think that's a multi-dimensional question with a set of answers. I think if infrastructure is like soft infrastructure and hard infrastructure. So soft infrastructure would include things like, and this gets a little bit beyond safety, but it's the example that comes to mind. Are folks familiar with the RITEC principles? So the RITEC principles, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this acronym right, were developed by Lego and UNICEF a couple years ago. And they were not just done in academia, but it was done through, built with kids, right? So this is where user agency kind of comes into mind. And so this is all about how do you create an age-appropriate experience that considers all these different dimensional factors. Meaning, you don't have to reinvent the wheel at any given company, right? You could take this thing off the shelf. It's well-researched, was deeply funded, and you have a really good starting point, no matter if you're a size of 1 or you're a size of 1,000. So I think more of that is really key in our industry. The things that I've seen really recently that I've been kind of inspired by is contributions to the trust and safety space, where we should not compete on safety, right? So that's a baseline experience. The example I'll give there is Roost, Roost tools, where they'll host certain things like content moderation platform or capabilities that have been contributed to them through large organizations like Discord, who have, let's say, the wherewithal to develop something quite sophisticated around, like CSAM detection. But that's good for all, right? We shouldn't have to do that. So I think as an industry, we're still probably evolving. What does that mean in the broader sphere of everything, including AI? But those are a couple of examples that come to mind for me.
Yeah, 100%. I've said it many, many times. I'll probably say it at least a couple more thousand times. But when one of us wins, we all win. Safety is not proprietary. It is not something that you can do better and then win over somebody else. It's something that if we all do successfully, it helps everyone.
Yeah.
I would also just try to argue for folks to collaborate with the people that are asking for safety. So understand where your users are coming from. What are the risks that they're seeing? Understand what the parents of the users are coming from. If you do service to minors, that's a great area to learn like what the concerns of the public are. And I would also say that if you can collaborate with your policymakers, with your lawmakers, with these regulatory bodies, so that that base level of understanding, but also that communication is strong. If you're getting a lot of requests from a certain group, reach out to that group and understand what is the underlying message or what is the kind of theme here. I would say that that kind of deeper level of communication is only beneficial to all parties. And then I would also say, recognize the gaps. If there's a space in an area that you are not able to service, know that. Know what you are comfortable doing, know what you are uncomfortable doing, and then ask the experts in that field if that is a space that you're not comfortable in going. Trying to do it all sounds really fun, but it ends up being a problem. So if you have the ability to reach out to some knowledgeable bodies, some actual research-based discovery or entities, this is a great area for you to make sure that you are doing things in the most ethical and moral way that you can, but also you legitimize the idea if you can ask the experts and get their opinions of what should be best practice.
So if you look at the sponsors of the TrustCon, or for that matter, a list of the supporters from Connect Safely, or for that matter, a list of the members of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's Tech Coalition, you're going to see companies that compete with each other every single day. But when it comes to supporting organizations like the TrustCon and Connect Safely and NECMEC, they're united, they're working together. And I think that's very much to the credit of this industry. So we're going to wrap up soon, but let's say we were to come back here in 2031, 5 years from now, if I'm doing the math correctly, and we say, what have we done right? What have we done wrong? What does good look like? What does success look like? And I don't know whether 2031 is when we'll be best to measure that. I'm sure in 2036 we'll have to do it again. But give me a sense of what success looks like.
We've provided tools that allows companies of any size to be able to understand the age, location, and requirements of the users that they serve in a sustainable and scalable way. That isn't cordoned off to those who can simply either build it themselves because they have the resources, or those who can just outright pay for it. So I think the ability for us to proliferate age-appropriate design and not to just talk about it is what's kind of core to my own personal mission. I think safety becomes a bit of a byproduct of that, but what I would like to see by then is that it's the norm and not the sort of edge case condition.
I would also add that AI literacy just across the board would be a huge success factor of AI becoming a little bit more legitimized as a adopted product. Not only from like a regulatory or government standpoint, like they understand what AI is, but from a consumer standpoint, if you're able to educate folks what this thing is, how it works, what is the purposes of it, creating that literacy I think is going to be a really impactful area for folks to index on. Because then you just allow people to actually have a kind of like fourth wall break, have that understanding in between what this is, what does it do, what are you looking for. I would also say that an area for us to do a lot of work and a lot of communication is this kind of publicly available tooling. I want to parrot that and just echo the fact that it's like, if you're able to share what works with other people, if you're able to embed something that could be applicable for not only yourself, but also these other use cases, making that visible, making that public, also reaching out to folks that you could actually benefit, having that proactive approach is something that I really think would be a leader in the success of just what AI could be.
Well, thank you guys, Nathan and Mike. I really appreciate your insight.